Okay, good morning, everyone. Happy fall.
I have them all.
While Kip is getting settled, I want to first acknowledge we have Chief Anderson here today, which is awesome. Welcome, Chief. And today is Donna Rajewski's last quarterly department heads meeting. I know that Donna is very sad that today is her last quarterly department heads meeting. So Donna, it's okay if you say today, I have nothing further to add. But we will look forward to hearing from Karen in the future. And it did strike me that as I was reviewing your report, we're going to have, a majority of new members on the Board of Selectmen after November 5th. So they might need a tutorial on how to read your quarterly report. So. But we want to thank you so much for all of your contributions to the town, for your good spirit, and you will be missed here in the town hall, so please don't be a stranger. Okay, we'll get started with the assessor's office. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, all. The report pretty much speaks for itself. We've had last quarter was very busy with the tax billing. Most of that was in reaction or any changes to the assessments. That was the 5-year reval cycle for October 1 of 18. We've made some significant adjustments on prorates and changes to motor vehicles that come through. We have 17,000 motor vehicles in town. We make changes to about 1,500, meaning if you buy a car, trade up, trade down, that correction gets done on a monthly prorate basis. That's in concert with the tax billing. And most important is that we are waiting for the 1,100 business personal property filings that will be given to my office by November 1st, or subject to a 25% penalty. And we've had about a 95% compliance in the past couple of years with that, so that's working really well. Other than that, I welcome questions that you might have.
Questions for Tony? Yep.
I just was interested in knowing what is the difference between usable and non-usable sales.
Of the 619 sales used to define the values for October 1 of 18 and to defend the values, a usable sale would be something that it's a fully arm's length transaction between buyer and seller exposed to the market for a reasonable length of time, unencumbered. Didn't have anything else included with that. So the sensitive issue on usable sales in the past reval cycle was pretty much days on the market and the price points. Okay. The market change. So it's really identifying not only the sales price, but the neighborhood changes and the influences that come into establishing fair market value.
So transfers between in the family would not count,
No,
is it?
Got it. Would count. Not necessarily. They might.
They might, yeah. I understand.
Usable for purposes of assessment.
Assessment.
Right.
Got it.
Any other questions for Tony?
Nope.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, building department. Good morning, Pete.
What is your notes?
Really don't have anything to add to my report, but I will field any questions you may have.
My question today is regarding the 3 new developments.
Right.
Have you issued demolition permits for any of the buildings in any of those projects?
Not as yet.
Okay.
The Palmer project, they've been shifting over some of their tenants that are staying into different buildings, getting ready for demolition, but I have not received anything as yet from their project. Federal project, they have 2 smaller buildings they're going to start with, but they've only just issued or brought us in preliminary information for those demos, so they have not been issued as yet. They have been issued utility upgrades, which they have started on. We've talked to them about phasing the project, how they're going to protect the other structures as people use and some of the other spaces while they're demoing a few of them. So I understand that the plans are now in zoning, and they do have a phasing portion of that they're going to go over with us.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was curious, as a neighbor to those properties, we already got notices and like certified letters saying that there was going to be demolition, so I...
Right, that's part of their requirement. They have to notify all budding neighbors what's going on, so if you have an objection to it, you have a period of time which you can apply a formal objection to anything that's being done, but that's required. And that's only one portion of their demolition requirements. There's about 15 items they have to supply to us before they get a demolition permit. Plus, there's a 21-day waiting period.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Any other questions for Pete?
No, very complete report.
Thank you, Pete. Okay, Darien EMS. Joe, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I just want to highlight on the report that we did start tracking the paramedic flight car response times, differentiating between day and night, since the vehicle had to relocate back to Glenbrook at night because of the loss of the building over on the east side of town. So we have seen, just comparable to the previous quarter of 2018, a slight bump, and we'll keep a closer eye on that. But overall, the transition has been well. We certainly are appreciative to the Darien Fire Department for housing the paramedic during the day. We think that makes a huge difference in responses, especially on that side of town. So keeping an asset over there is definitely helpful.
Okay.
So, but we are keeping an eye on when they do relocate to Glenbrook at night, what impact it's having.
Okay.
So,
Mark?
On that same topic, at the bottom of page 2, paramedic L and S.
lights and sirens. There are
Thank you.
rare occasions when they'll go without lights and sirens.
Yeah. Thank you.
We're measuring the emergency responses. Our membership stands strong. We just welcomed 24 new freshman candidates into the program, so excited to get them on board. You can see we've had a fairly busy summer with covering medical standby events and member training, and we trained 89 citizens in first aid and CPR.
Great. I was remiss in not mentioning this up front, so Tony and Pete, you can share with me later, but if anyone has any thoughts about legislative proposals that would be a benefit to your department or the service that you provide, if you could please let me know that. You're even welcome to share it in this forum if you wish. Okay. Anything else for Joe?
I had a question. So I saw that we had standby medical coverage at the Roten Point Sailing Regatta, also at the Wellness Fair at New Canaan Country School, and over at Chelsea Piers. These are all sort of private organizations outside of Darien. Do they contribute any funding for that? Or is
They
that-
do. So
Okay.
we'll bill basically a nominal rate just to cover costs for any organization who wants to use us. The Roten Point Club is an adult member of Post 53 who asked for our services over there with some of our young adults. And I believe the New Canaan School was, again, one of our adults who have children there who asked for us to go up. So we have to seek permission from that town's EMS agency just to make sure that we don't, and they were grateful for us to go up there as well. So.
I had exactly the same question, but I have one more from the back. So, and you probably just answered it. If a private organization in town wants to have some training from you guys, whether it be, basic CPR or whatever, can they present and say, we have X amount of people, if we pay you, will you come to our organization?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll go anywhere to get people trained in CPR. Absolutely.
Great.
Perfect.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention we have our annual haunted house this Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So it'll be fun for all.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, emergency management. Good morning, Mark.
Just call your attention to the fact that along with EMS, the local EMS plan is going to be due to go to the state this January, and it'll be coming before your board shortly. So just want you to know that. The other thing, since you're talking about laws, the T-Ban Act has gone
Yep.
nowhere to return that back to what we expect it to be. But there is a large discrepancy with agencies because of the size of the cities that are involved, that I think it'll be in the court system for a long time. So if we don't get any changes, we're going to have to replace all our radio equipment.
On that issue, I brought it to the specific attention of Senator Murphy when I was in Washington and with Congressman Himes. Neither one of them had a good understanding, as most people don't. I've been making inquiry with my colleagues around the state, and most chief elected officials are not aware of the issue. So I don't know if the emergency responder community, the DEMIS organizations, could maybe do some PR to make sure there's an awareness so that additional lobbying can happen with our federal representatives.
It really affects such a small percentage of the country. It's the metropolitan areas.
Right.
So it's LA, Dallas,
Yep.
New York City, Washington, and things like that. So from a grand perspective of Connecticut, it really doesn't affect too much of the state of Connecticut. It's really only a few handful of people in Fairfield County.
Okay.
So that's why I think there's not an awareness, but it's very troubling because there's nothing to replace it with. So from a standpoint of getting frequencies and having a viable radio system for us, it doesn't exist. So
Well, certainly here in the 4th Congressional District with our, Congressman Himes and our senators.
yes, appreciate it.
Okay.
Take any questions?
Just a note for the future, again, when we reconstitute the Board of Selectmen, I'd like to arrange for a tutorial for the new board to talk about emergency communications.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
Any other questions for Mark? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Finance. Jen, good morning.
The only thing that I have to add is just to highlight that the last quarter our focus has been on the audit and internal process improvements. We should have a draft of the audit around Thanksgiving. It's going into their internal review process within probably the next week. And then looking ahead to the next quarters, we'll be focused on budget and implementing some munis changes that got delayed.
Okay. Questions for Jen? Yes, Kip.
I see that you, on page 2, you talk about possibly issuing a new RFP for audit services.
Yes.
Are you required to do that every so many years?
We are not required to. Best practice is every 5 years to at least see what's out there. And Board of Finance, when we completed our initial 3-year contract with Bloom Shapiro, Board of Finance agreed to changing partners, going another 2 years with Bloom, but then said that they wanted to look at doing an RFP. Not necessarily discounting Bloom, giving them the opportunity to submit an RFP
Right.
and possibly selecting them again if they rise to the top, but at least going through the process.
And that seems more rapid than happens in the corporate world. I mean, usually you're talking about 7+ years with 2 partner changes in that process, which is what you're doing already.
Right, and so this would be, if we were to change,
It'd be 5.
it would be after 5 years, yeah.
Yeah. But that's a Board of Finance choice.
It is.
Okay. It just seems more rapid than in the corporate world, that's all. And could you also just give me a quick top line on what are the desired functions or benefits of ESS?
It will allow employees to view their own pay stubs. We will be able to hopefully eliminate manual distribution of pay stubs. They'll be able to access them 24/7. If they don't have them, we don't have to go in and reproduce them for loan applications, that sort of thing. They'll have eventually they'll have 3 years worth of W-2s at their fingertips. And they'll also be able to have their view of their accrued and used time. So it's really an enhancement for our employees.
Which helps them, but obviously reduces the amount of time you have to do answering questions, right?
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Jen, could you just take another minute and again, just in summary form, give us a summary of our year-end financial picture?
Overall year end, we did very well. We're expecting about a $2.7 million contribution to fund balance. Most of that, about 2.2 million of it, is from result of operations. A lot of one-time savings we did. Board of Finance is taking a look, but I also took a look to see if we had any kind of recurring surpluses within the departments that look like something we need to address. Nothing really stood out. It was mostly that we were conservative on budgeting our state revenues in the capital fund, so we could hold back on what we contributed from the general fund. We had a significant surplus in contingency. I think it ended up being around $300,000 that we didn't use. And the Board of Ed returned over $300,000. So those were our main items. Other than that, it was a lot of bits and pieces here and there.
That's excellent news.
Great.
And the fund is at what percent now?
It's going to be about, if after the audit we get that 2.7 addition to undesignated, it'll be about 17%.
So, okay.
But.
But the
already
Board
spent
of
it.
Finance has
Other ideas.
moved forward and submitted to the RTM a plan to redeem 3 callable bonds early. Rather than doing it through a regular bond refunding, they are going to use $2.1 million of our undesignated fund balance to call those bonds, redeem them, and it saves about $50,000 in interest. And then we will not have those debt service payments in
Right.
future budgets.
Thank you very much. Fire Marshal. Good morning, Bob.
Fairly busy quarter. I don't have a lot to add to my report. Our new flight officer started in July and got himself up to speed, went through all the cases, and has been dealing with all our day-to-day complaints that we continue to get. We had one neighborhood that complained about a residence, and I think it generated about 20 complaints for one residence. So, but it's been busy, and we 4 fireworks shows for the summer, and then there was just another one this past weekend for a wedding at Country Club of Darien.
62 blight cases. I think that is far in excess of what the RTM ever imagined
I
when
think any
the
of
ordinance
us
was put in place.
even envisioned out there.
Yeah.
Are those ones that he's determined are actual blight?
No.
Or are those the call?
They are
There's 60
total.
yeah, total.
Yeah, it's a total number of cases. 24 closed out, 16 were not blight, 11 are watch list, and then there's 11 actual cases.
But they all require his time and attention.
Yeah. You know, and those 11 cases tend to generate multiple complaints.
We're familiar with that.
So I was looking at the stats for the hoarding cases, and I saw that, for fiscal year 17 and 18, there were 8, and for 19 and 20, it was 11. Are they the same cases? Do they take like 2 years to resolve?
They take
Is
a
that
long
what it
time to
is?
resolve, and we actually just added another one as of a few weeks ago.
Okay, but is that typical, a 2-year process?
It is a
to-
very long process. Some of them, we at least get their homes to a safe condition, but we have to keep monitoring them so that they don't basically fall back into bad habits and start having, access ways and everything get tightened up.
Are any of these ongoing from fiscal year 17 that are in this list? Okay, so we're just building on it. That's what I thought.
Okay, any other questions for Bob? Kip?
A question about page 5, which is the false alarms.
Yes.
Now, if I look at my numbers properly, at the top of the page, we have total calls and false calls. It's been averaging pretty much in the 70%. 70, 73%, 69%. False calls as a percent of the total calls.
Yes.
And then when we look at the billings appear to be about 25 to 30% of the false alarms. Why is the
So
disparity?
they are not all billable calls. It may be a false call for, somebody called and reported something, thought they saw smoke in an area, and there was nothing found. If the fire department is canceled en route, once they're dispatched
Right.
and they're canceled, it's not a billable offense. If it's a false carbon monoxide alarm, we don't bill for it because the resident cannot detect whether or not they have an actual issue with carbon monoxide in their home.
Okay.
So would it make sense, sorry, are you done?
No, I'm just noting the difference between.
Is there a way to make a third I hate to do more work, but a third category in that there's true false alarms, and then there's
Billable false alarms?
somehow to distinguish what Kip is saying, so that way.
Yeah, I can figure something out. Sure.
So you only bill if the alarm system goes off.
Yep.
If a person calls in and says, I think there's a fire and it's not real, that's not billable.
Right.
So maybe that could be when's the alarm that goes off.
Still a lot of false alarms, right?
Yes.
It is.
A lot of false alarms. And I'm sure that we look at the police report also there too.
And you'll remember that's the action that the RTM took last night, was to approve our recommended fee increase
Right.
for the false alarms as a disincentive or an incentive for people to get their systems in good operating condition.
And we hope that it proves to be a method that works.
Probably, I think I've asked this question before, but there's no particular manufacturer of alarm system out there that we can say is the one that's constantly,
Correct. There is an, yeah, we can.
okay.
Anything
Thank you.
else, anything else for Bob? Okay, thank you. Health Department, good morning, David. Another busy quarter for the Health Department.
Been in the news a lot lately.
Yes.
Yep.
Local public health in the news. I'd like to start off by reminding everyone of the program that's going to be held at the library tomorrow night that we're co-sponsoring with Stanford Health on vaping. So far in Connecticut, according to the most recent press release from the State Health Department, there have been 31 hospitalizations due to respiratory distress associated with vaping. 16 of them are in Fairfield County, and we have had one hospitalization here in town. So that's going on tomorrow night at the library from 7 to 9. It's intended to facilitate a dialogue between parents and students or children about the dangers associated with vaping. It will feature a pulmonologist, a pediatrician, and our own James Palmieri to talk about what's happening in the schools.
Is that going to be taped by Channel 79? Because
Yes,
there's a
it will.
town conflict tomorrow night.
Right, it will be on Channel 79.
Great, thank you.
So we have made arrangements for that. The other item that's been in the news lately is mosquitoes in Tripoli. I made a statement at the department head meeting last week that we didn't have to worry about mosquitoes anymore, and later that same day, I was notified that a positive mosquito pool was found here in Darien. As of today, there was another one found in Monroe. But Dr. Carter, who's the chief epidemiologist for the State Health Department, says the risk of anyone contracting Triple-E infection from a mosquito bite at this point in time is almost zero. Didn't say zero, but almost zero. I've been in close contact with Dr. Adley, our superintendent of schools, about this matter, as well as vaping, by the way. And he put out an advisory last week after considering the almost zero not being zero to take on a more conservative approach to evening activities. That wasn't a recommendation that we made, and it's not a recommendation that the State Health Department has made, but it's one that's out of extreme caution, and certainly we can't advise against caution. And finally, with respect to news, I think it was yesterday press release from state again regarding immunization rates of kindergartners. Two of our schools are not meeting the minimum national standards for immunizations. We're below 95, which is the national recommended rate. Dr. Adley and I, again, will be in communication about this. We've already exchanged emails. We have to sit down and figure out what we think may be a good approach for us to take. Because it's a troubling trend in that it's kindergartners that are the ones that aren't meeting the rates. As the school-age children get older, the rates are better and much lower. But if we're starting to see this kind of tip of the iceberg thing move through our population, that might be something for us to be concerned about in the future. So we think we need to take some action on that.
Well,
And that's the measles story in Tripoli and vaping. If you have any other questions about any of those topics or anything in my report, please.
Pam.
So I have a daughter at the middle school, and there's a level of paranoia amongst her peers about the Triple-E. And, they're still going to their sports in the early evening. And is there any thought to reconsider changing, some of their activities or limiting them until we have a hard frost?
Again, the advice that we get from people who know, State Health Department and the Ag Station, is that the risk is almost zero. So as far as what does that mean?
Right.
I mean, our advice is to, use bug repellent, use mosquito repellent, wear long sleeves, long pants.
And so if they do, like my daughter came home with 2 mosquito bites yesterday, right? So what are your recommendations when the kids are coming home still getting bit by mosquitoes?
Just pay attention to how you feel. Most people, this is a very rare illness. First of all, I think that when you consider the amount of time all of us spend outside and how many times we all get bit by mosquitoes, there have only been 4 cases in Connecticut total. Right. So it's a very rare, very, very rare.
But you can imagine the firestorm amongst teenagers and teenagers about.
Well, I'm not questioning the fear factor associated with this. I'm not questioning that at all. But we have to consider the balance too. I mean, if you want to talk about risks that we face on a daily basis, getting into a car and how fatal accidents can happen. We're faced with risks all the time. So the reality of this posing a risk to any individual is infinitesimally small. It's there, but then there's risks that we face all the time in everything we do in life. And so we have to kind of take that into account. The fact that you have no control over a mosquito bite, to the extent that you don't, unless you're not putting on repellent and you have short sleeves on, then you need to take protective measures. Can't deny the importance of doing that.
Thank you. And then just one, sorry.
Could I just chime in here
Yeah.
for a second? Because I have had several emails from parents who are concerned. And I've shared information from our health department, from the state health department, and from the CDC in terms of protocols, what they're recommending. Parents are asking about spraying for mosquitoes. It is not recommended. We don't know the unintended health consequences or environmental consequences to spraying for mosquitoes. But the simplest advice that I have is, as a family, decide if you want your kids to be outside after school and at times when mosquitoes might be active until we get a hard frost and we can feel a little bit more confident. This is one of those areas where government plays a small role, but families have the bigger role here. And if you feel that your child is at risk, don't let your child play outside if you're worried about that. So that was my advice, along with reams of public information that are readily available for people.
Great advice. Thank you.
And I had one question on the vaccinations, the data that you're receiving. How are you acquiring that? I don't ever recall checking a box whether my kids were vaccinated when they enrolled at homes. Mine are, but I just am curious.
It's vaccination rates that are recorded by the state health department through physicians, and it's also required that before you go to school that you have the vaccines unless you have exemptions. 2 exemptions are, one is health and the other is religious, and so those are check boxes that the schools have.
So you're getting them from the schools?
It's schools to the state and then back to us. This is a new informational resource that we never had before we've had this new commissioner. We've been asking for it for years as local health directors because we have no idea. Reading about this throughout the country, the measles outbreak that's been occurring, we had no access to that data unless the schools gave it to us. The state had it under privacy law. And this commissioner came in with a different concept of privacy law and released the information last year to a firestorm of criticism. But currently, in the next legislative session, there will be initiatives to eliminate the religious exemption so that this kind of reason for not getting vaccinated is eliminated. And our primary reason in town for not reaching those rates, the prescribed rates, is because of religious exemptions, not health related.
And is that data then only from the public school system, not from the children that are at independent schools?
All schools, including the private schools.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
David, I think it's such a positive that you and Dr. Adley are having such great dialogue. It's really great to, many times in different departments, the school is on one side and the town is on the other, so it's very encouraging that you're communicating as much. That's my first comment. And my second comment is, it's not to downplay anything, but this whole mosquito situation has risen to the top as it should in some ways. But if you look at, we talk about the vaping numbers and we talk about the opioid crisis,
Right.
It's amazing that the opioid crisis, which gets some attention, but on a scale, I'm trying to understand why we, as the public, are all of a sudden so emphasized on one thing when we've been trying to get such attention on other health crises, that it's just a little unnerving for me.
We can't even get information on overdose victims now.
Correct.
It's part of the reason. Part of the reason is the way the information is being released. Press releases for mosquitoes. I've never quite understood why there's so much emphasis on that. We have people getting really sick from ticks, and ticks don't get nearly the amount of financing, money, ticks research as mosquitoes do.
Yeah.
That's a very robust program. Not to criticize
Correct.
that,
Correct.
but there are other things, as you say, that should get more attention, and public gets distracted, in my mind, by the extremely low risk associated with the mosquitoes. And in West Nile virus, every year we get the reports from the state, and it goes into the paper, and the paper publishes it and makes front page every year that West Nile virus is found. But it's here. But it is. It's here every year. We haven't had a case of anyone getting sick from West Nile, but yet it makes the front page. Why is that? I don't know. It's just, I don't know, considered newsworthy for some reason. And I think
Probably
that's why.
has something to do with the stigma that still exists around things like opioids and vaping, I would imagine. But,
Could be.
looking at 10,000 overdose deaths versus 4 deaths from mosquitoes, it's a bit out of balance.
I think so.
Anything else for David? Thank you very much for
Thank you.
keeping us informed. Human Resources. Lori. Good morning.
I don't have anything additional to add to my report, but I'll just highlight a couple of items. There's been a lot of personnel activity, a lot of that related to actions at the police department. We had hired 4 new dispatchers, and they started just a month ago. Also related to the promotion of Chief Anderson, we then had promotions to the level of captain, lieutenant, and sergeant. I helped implement that. Those were promotions by the Police Commission. Additionally, on October 1st, we had a cyber risk training that all employees attended. October is actually Cyber Risk Month, so we kind of kicked that off, and that was the first such training that we've offered to our employees. And I think that's really critical. We, at the town, have experienced some of the scams, internet scams that have gone on, gotten strange things in our email that appear to be authorized emails that aren't, and they're really kind of things that are getting at data breaches. So I think that was really great to have for our employees. And then tomorrow we have our annual celebration of service luncheon for our employees, where we'll be recognizing 21 employees that have long service milestones to celebrate. And that's it. Are there any questions?
Questions for Lori? Kip?
I just noted that in the back, you mentioned that there are more employees out on the family and medical leave. That's the new law?
It's not new at all.
It's not new?
It's
Okay.
not new. It's a federal law, and it's nearly 20 years old.
Okay, it's not the new one that Connecticut put in?
No, it's not related to that. There is the new state law, but that is not what I'm speaking of.
Okay, I just wondered whether that was having an effect already. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Anything else for Lori? No? Thank you very much. Okay. Ally, Human Services. Good morning.
I wanted to point out a typo in the renter's rebate section. I don't know if anyone noticed, but it's actually $23,181, not $23 that our clients received in their grants. A total of 40 clients received that. One other thing I wanted to mention that I brought up last time was that we're on a wait list for a new program, the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program, and we luckily got off of that wait list in July, and so far we've handed out 32 vouchers to our low-income seniors to go to the market, and they've all been really pleased with it. I'll give you the final numbers.
How does that work? Is it a just certain amount of
Vouchers.
money?
Yeah, so it comes like a little packet of $3 increments, and they can go spend it at the market, any farmer market, but most of them go here, of course.
That's really nice.
Yeah, it was a fun treat for them. It's not a lot of money, but it was a nice.
It's terrific.
Yeah.
I know you have busy season coming up.
Yes,
and
we
I know
do.
you'll be publishing things that you need from the community,
Yes, we do.
donations and adopting families, etc.
Yep. We're in the process of getting that out in the media now. And last year we had over 60 families adopted in town, which means that the kids give us, or the families give us a wish list, and then we coordinate with volunteers, and they do the shopping, and it makes for some very happy families and children. And we also had over 60 seniors, so we had almost all of our clients adopted, and we did not spend any town money on the holidays well, Thanksgiving we did, but not at Christmas time. So we're
That's
hoping
wonderful.
the same. Yeah.
Anything else for Ally?
Just a quick thing. In conferences and meetings, you said you visited the Triangle Community Center. Where is that?
That's in Norwalk.
Okay.
It's for the LGBTQ community, and they do amazing work for actually, I think it's the only organization in Fairfield County that provides those services. So we just reached out to them to meet with the director and find out how we can collaborate more and what services they offer.
Thank you. Glad I asked.
Yeah.
And I just had a question. How do you identify, like, the children, like you had 5 that went to camp for free through the Salvation Army? How are you, I saw in the back that you work with some of the social workers at schools and all that. Is it, they get sort of tapped through maybe like a modified lunch payment program, or how do they find you?
It's mostly the children that we already are working with and families, and we reach out to all of them. It is only 1 week, so it's a limited time that they're able to go. So they go to sleepaway camp. They go on a Monday morning, and they come back Friday evening. So I think we'd have more children going if families didn't, they're usually making plans for the whole summer, especially the working families, if they need coverage. So it's basically the kids that we work with. And we provide them with a gas gift card because it's almost 2 hours away, so the families have to drive them both ways, and Dunkin' Donuts because they have to get up bright and early to get there. So they all enjoyed it. It's a great treat for them, and they don't have to pay anything.
Great.
Anything else for Ally?
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Great
you.
report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, information technology. Good morning, George.
How you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Just brief summary. Just a lot of server upgrades, a lot of computers going on. We thought that the little cybersecurity class that Lori put together was kind of neat. I'm always getting questions, so it's kind of cool. Keeps everybody honest in respect to everything that they're receiving over the internet.
Yep.
Nothing further. You guys have
So
questions?
cybersecurity is a huge issue, particularly for small governments like ours seem to be the target of cyber attacks. And I know that your department is very deeply involved in protecting the Board of Ed and the town. I don't know if it would be appropriate, if there's any information that can be added to this report on an ongoing basis, or if we could ask going forward for the Board of Selectmen, and if it needs to be an executive session, to have a report on cybersecurity efforts. I think it's a top-of-the-pile issue for cities and towns, and I would like to have us receive more information so that we can have a sense of relief and comfort that we're well protected. I know we are, but I feel like the Board of Selectmen should receive some information about that in one way or another.
All right. I'll mention it to Jeff.
Okay. Anything else for George? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mather Center, Beth is not here, okay. Parks and Rec, Pam.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just wanted to highlight one thing and also make one correction. The correction is on the last page of my report. and that is that there's 45 spaces were sold out at Pear Tree and 30 spaces at Wheat Beach. I had that mixed up. And highlight that Lori Bora and Mike Scrow of the Parks and Recreation Commission did a nice presentation at the RTM last night in terms of kind of presenting the Pear Tree Improvement Project. I think was helpful to get out some good information, answering some misleading information that's out there. And there was some questions handed out at the beginning of the meeting that we are going to do our best to answer and post on our website. And that will also be helpful too, as long as we keep moving toward this. So that's all I have.
Perfect. I know you're super busy. Got a lot going on. My eye focuses right in on those credit card fees. Yep. And we don't need to talk about it this morning, but I need to get an update on where we are with I think it's the Board of Finance, addressing the issue of credit card fees. Okay, I know Pam will be back before us with lots of different projects, so thank you. It was a late night and an early morning.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Kip, sorry.
Just one question. I look at the revenues on the first page, and I look at the tennis rental, and it's so small. Is it really worth spending time with it?
It's just all broken down in our software. So when we do a report, so we just add it in there. It's not included in our programs. It's just broken out. It's been broken out.
So in other words, we don't spend a lot of administrative time on it?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Not at all. Anything else?
Anything else for Pam? Okay, thank you very much. Planning and zoning. Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning. Good morning. One of the big things to notice is that July and August brought 2 resignations to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which you're all aware of. John Cini and Kevin Cunningham, both longtime members, resigned. They are now on other boards, and Kevin's on another commission, and John is running for the Board of Education. And Liz Riva's term is up in November, so we'll get a 3rd new member for Planning and Zoning. If you have any other questions, happy to answer.
I'm very curious about the convenience food for Greaves. What are they looking to
I think
sell?
they're looking to do a very small thing, very similar to what's going on at the store right below it, whose name escapes me right now. Kirby. Right. Just a place to sit down, have a cup of coffee. Either while you're waiting for something or just to come in out of the cold or whatever. It's not a very big thing. It's just more the nature of having food and coffee. I think it's going to be available for purchase.
Okay.
Very few seats.
Isn't it funny how life sort of circles back around? Didn't we used to have like the soda counter at the local drugstore? That'd be awesome.
I think
soda jerk.
Exactly.
I think David was talking about it, David Genovese. I'd have to double check on whether that's where he wants to go in the future. But just to, we've all seen families in there. People are just waiting around for their prescription to be filled. So it'd be nice just to have a place to sit down and just wait.
Sure. Okay. I mean, there's some programmatic things that could go along with that too, for the pharmacist to spend time talking with people. They're usually a wealth of information. And thank you for being at the RTM last night and the presentations from Baywater and Federal Realty. Hopefully the Palmer family can come to a future RTM meeting.
Right. David mentioned that his video, and if you haven't seen the video, it's basically a 3D model of shows people walking through the site and what the site will look like when it's done. Really? It's on his website, so we encourage people that didn't see it last night because he didn't have time to go on his website, and then I'll reach out again to the Palmers to see maybe they can come to another RTM meeting.
Perfect. Anything else for Jeremy? Yep.
Jeremy, just on the last page, you mentioned under the GIS system an AED location map.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's defibrillator. Yeah, it's the paddles.
The paddles. Okay.
Revive you if you have a heart attack.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Jeremy. Police Department. Chief Anderson. Wonderful to see you here in your new leadership role.
I had been, called up to the big leagues for a cup of coffee in September once or twice before, but I think my call-up is probably permanent at this point. So it is indeed a pleasure to come before the Board of Selectmen this morning. If you haven't noticed, we have had seismic change at the police department, the likes of which we have never seen in the 100-year almost history of the police department. This year we have, as Lori mentioned, 4 new telecommunicators, 2 new captains, a new chief of police, 2 new sergeants, 1 new detective sergeant, 1 new lieutenant, who's now the training lieutenant, a new police commissioner, a new police commission chairman, 2 new police officers, Bryce Brown and then Matthew Ackerman, who was sworn in yesterday. So I'm into my 50 days of my first 100 days. I'm still unpacking my office. I thought I could get it unpacked in 50 days, but it's not been the case so far. We're very fortunate, though, as I've mentioned to the Police Commission, and I've mentioned to most folks here in this room, the Police Department and the Police Commission has always had a deep depth of talent, and that is no change here. Captain Marin and Captain Shredder certainly hit the ground running. We work very, very well together. I think probably most everyone here has talked to them on some topic already. We're pulling this train in the same direction. As I also told the Police Commission, my remaining tenure here and the years that I have left is a 2-pronged approach. One is to continue the great service and the professional law enforcement that is provided to this community. Second is succession planning and to make sure our staff keeps that deep bench so you will always get the service from the police department that you've always gotten. A third subset of that is, as mentioned with Dr. Adley, I can confirm that communication has been excellent with the Board of Ed thus far. We're working very close with Dr. Adley. I do intend to have complete and open, transparent communication with all boards and commissions. There's some things the police department cannot talk about, or at least at the exact moment, but that's very few and far between, and I intend on having communication going forward with all boards and commissions and other department heads to be as open and transparent as possible.
Thank you.
We've been busy at the police department as well. You can see a listing of the report. I guess one question that I do have for the Board of Selectmen is, being that this is my first quarterly report at the helm, are you happy with the quarterly report that's received by the police department? From where I stand, it's always been quite in-depth. I think a good, nice overview of what the police department is doing. If there's something that you would like, I would hope that you would let me know.
The report, I think under Chief Osborne, the report got revised, and it's easier to read. The one thing that would be of great interest, I think, to us, so we can assist you and your department, would be any notable trends that you see. And certainly don't need to put it on there if there aren't any, but if there are trends that are of public safety in nature, I think that would be helpful. And at some point, I think we would love to hear a little bit more detail on samples or examples of the Juvenile Review Board. Doesn't need to be in this report, but maybe sometime when you come before us, you can give us some examples of that.
The JRB is doing excellent service. I do poke my head in there sometimes simply to monitor. I'm not involved in the process. The folks that are do an excellent job. I think it's been well received. It's certainly well regarded by the State's Attorney's Office, and it does take away from things there at juvenile court that really shouldn't be there. So, so far it's been a stellar success, and I would continue. I would think that it would continue.
That's great, and I'm happy to see that 2 officers attended the school security conference. I'm sure that their professional development will be very beneficial to the town and maybe even the Oxbridge Elementary School.
School security is still one of our forefront missions, and we do work on that on an ongoing basis. Just I want to touch on a couple of minor things that they're minor, major. Our building issues are still problematic, as Kate knows and DPW knows. With Tony and Ed and Dave Sabini, we're working through that. There's probably going to be some requests for some improvements in our police department building, even though it's 7 years old. There's things that are certainly taking way too much time and way too much money to try to fix that we have to get ahead of. So we're working on that with DPW. FOI requests. Both captains, when they came up, into the administrative area, I'm not sure they knew what to expect, but our FOI requests continue to come through. I would say we average at least one every week or one every 2 weeks. So that's something that people are certainly making more requests for FOI. And Mike DeSantos in our records division cleared a goodly amount of side job billing that we did bring in some revenue on that. We're still working on that to clear some of that, and we're going to be working with the administrative officer and town council to try to get a couple big numbers cleared off our books.
Great.
Questions from the board?
How is it going for Officer Schwengerer at the middle school as the new SRO?
It's, as I expected, it's a complete success. They're very happy to have him there. Now we get the question of, well, on the day that he happens to be off for training, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to do the same thing we have done for the last 50 years. We didn't have a school resource officer there until this year, so we're going to supplement the school resource officer with the school liaison officer or a youth detective or perhaps even the chief of police having lunch there on days that he might not be there. So he's not, he's there most days. We don't advertise the days he might not be there, but the days that he's not there, we pick up the slack to ensure that there's a police presence there during the day.
Great. Anything else for the chief? No? Great. Thank you.
Thank you for the communication. It's very helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, Public Works. Morning, Darren.
Good morning. Darren Ostafine, standing in for Ed Gentile, couldn't be here today.
I have a question.
Okay.
You go first. Do you want to highlight?
If there's anything you want me to highlight, I can speak to anything on here. Otherwise, I'll refrain.
So a topic of interest around the state is the unintended environmental consequences of road salt in our waterways. And I'm wondering if you have communication with your colleagues in the field and if there are ways to, are you aware of that issue? Are we trying to manage very carefully how much salt we put on the roads for that reason, being in a sensitive coastal environment?
Yes, but there's a more selfish reason. We have always managed salt because of the cost. I believe it was 2004-ish, we switched from a mixture of sand and salt. We went to straight salt, and it's been great. It's saved us a lot of sweeping time, a lot of disposal costs, and the environmental benefits are wetlands aren't filling up with sand because that's where it all goes. It gets in the drains. Our catch basins need less cleaning. The price of salt fluctuates. We haven't been able to tell why or predict when it will go up or down. It actually has gone down a couple of times. With regards to the strict environmental interpretation, we are aware of that, and it has been in the news for a very, very long time. I'm talking about way over 20 years. The city of Stamford did a study on salinization of people's personal wells. To date, we don't know of another product that will keep the traveling public safe and that will be as effective. There's a lot of products out there that are left over from beer manufacturing or liquor production, Ice Band, Magic, and there's a bunch of trade names for them, but in general, there's treated salt and there's salt. We don't use treated salt, we use straight salt. We use no sand, and certainly if someone comes up with an environmental alternative, a more sensitive environmental alternative that is proven effective, we'll consider it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. There's a lot chalked into this report. I'm sure that you'll, over time, give us updates on the addressing of illicit connections and the I&I study?
Sewer department is very busy. Sewer commission is very busy. They have a lot on their plate with regards to those issues. It's very slow going. It's going to take probably a change in the code of ordinance as well as some sort of an enforcement component to really force compliance. There's a number of things such as commercial. We're looking at fats, oils, and greases, which clog our system. And residential, there's people with sump pumps connected directly to our sewer system. Some people have roof leaders. In general, to correct those kind of things, it's very, very difficult. It's going to take something with teeth. Unfortunately, people just aren't going to do it on their own. So.
Right.
It's slow going, though. It's not something that just came to our attention. Sewer Commission has been looking at these things continually for years, literally years, and trying to very sensitively be careful about what they propose, what kind of changes we propose to the Code of Ordinances. We're all going to have to live with them.
I know that you state under the food scrap recycling that there's more information available on a Facebook page, but I'm wondering if we could add into the quarterly report just a total volume collected for the quarter and what the expense offset value would be to that, if that's possible.
Yeah, especially now that we have a full anniversary a year, kind of a look back at its, success or not.
Very happy to do that. There is a cost avoidance. Anything that goes into food composting obviously doesn't get disposed of in our MSW. It's run by volunteers. Ms. Bain has been incredible in getting that program off the ground and keeping it running. We see a continued interest. People continue to come into our department buying kits, wanting to participate, and it doesn't show any signs of slowing down. I think we last quarter the volunteer organization had some of the product of the compost returned to the site, and very well received. People came and enjoyed taking the compost, which is a product of the things that they dropped off. We'll definitely include that in the next quarterly report.
Okay. Anything else? Kip?
It might be a hair longer.
Oh, we can shorten it. First, I can't read this chart. Choice of background's not good. So
that's George's fault.
Pardon? You did this, George?
No.
Give me a break.
No, he installed a new Excel program on our computers.
Yeah, but come on.
And they have this beautiful grafting option with the black background.
Don't go there. Just
might be okay on a screen, but on paper.
Give one that can be read, please, and all these little dates at the bottom.
More clear graph.
Please.
Thank you.
Now, on with the Xerec solar power. You say in here that Eversource Energy is needed to complete the work to make the panels operational before we can. What's going on with Eversource on the panels?
Okay. First, I'd like to give Ed credit for all of that. I've done nothing personally, but I am informed about what he's been doing. And it is entirely Eversource's fault. They're, for whatever reason, they're dragging their feet. We have the panels on the roof.
Yeah. I know that.
You can go up there and look at them. They're beautiful. The sun hits them every day. We're not getting any electricity from them. Eversource has some things they have to do to make them operational, to connect them into our system so we can start getting electricity from them.
I think it's a little more complex than that from what I understand. I think it has something to do with the investors in the ZREC program. So I don't think it's entirely an Eversource mechanical connection issue. That I think we would be able to have a little bit more leverage over than some of the other
So it's probably financial bickering.
I believe that was my understanding as of last week.
Okay.
I defer to the first selectman, I didn't know that.
With regard to the Norotan Avenue and West Avenue intersections, I'm just curious as to the time it took to get the DOT approval. I mean, was it 2 months, 3 months, a year?
I'm going to guess a year. That was Ed's project too, but I'm going to guess a year. As far as I know, that one is on schedule. We're going to build it on time, we're going to bid it on time, but it did take a long time for the DOT to give us approval.
Jim, I can speak to that if you want.
Yes.
It did take a while because as part of the lot SIP program, all the applications go up to DOT and they look at them and they get many, many applications from throughout the state, and they make sure that they all comply with federal and state guidelines and codes, and especially DOT policy on how they want things designed. ADA would be another facet that they look for. But as Darren confirmed, that project is on schedule. Ed and I are today and tomorrow reviewing the easements required, both the maps and the documents, and the final appraisal report, which we've been working with Anthony Homicki. And we hope to reach out to 7 property owners to whom we need easements from in November, December, go out to bid January, February, March, start to work right on time in the spring with the hope that it's 4 to 6 months and we can have it completed in a year from now, which would be a new traffic light and a little lane widening and new sidewalk in the vicinity of the road in West.
To add a little bit more color, more than you might want today, but there's an intermediary step where the project has to be applied for to your Regional Council of Governments, WestCog, and needs WestCog approval before it can get CONDOT approval. So it really helps to have somebody from your town actively engaged at the WestCog level.
The chairperson.
You're going to help us?
Okay.
Can't wait to see this town generator. This has taken longer than the intersection in the widening of the lane. So that is very exciting. See this town generator.
Anything else for Darren? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, registrars. Morning, John.
Morning. Susan and I have been very busy putting the training together for the upcoming election. We're putting special emphasis on it because in the past couple elections, there's been some poll worker confusion that have caused some problems, and we want to make sure we don't have them here. Stratford comes to mind, where poll workers had to go in and testify in front of the Connecticut Supreme Court, and they weren't really happy about that. So we want to make sure they're trained, and that's what we're spending a lot of time on. We did have 2 successful registration drives at the residence of Sullick's Woods and at the high school. And it was kind of nice, the high school, because the kids were coming up to us and not only registering but asking questions about the upcoming election. So that it was fun for a change, instead of going to chase them down and getting them to register. Other than that, I did make some changes to balance the voting districts that impacts the RTM, so Donna has a little work to do before she leaves. That's my parting gift to her. But basically what happens, it's a census here, and we have to balance, because those districts are voting districts, and we want to make sure they're equal. So that's why I did some street changes. I thought they were minor, but Donna has informed me they're a little bit more difficult. But we'll make sure the voters know where to go to vote. So, any questions? No.
Nope.
And just so you know, next year is going to be busy, and we're addressing some of those issues. We have some conflicts. Henley School could be a problem with the upcoming primary. I have to talk to Don about it, and I've talked to Jamie about it, and Kate, so we're going to try to work those issues too.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much for always being so well organized for our election.
I try. Susan tries to.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Tax collector, Kathy. Morning.
So we've had a busy quarter. Collections on the current levy are right in line where they have been the last few years. We've had strong delinquent tax collections. Primarily, it was things I was working on trying to get the money in by prior fiscal year end that didn't come in until July or August, but we got the money, so with more interest, so all is good. We had higher prorate billings on new construction than had been budgeted, $257,000 versus $100,000. Primarily, there were a couple of projects in there that weren't anticipated to be billed that were billed, which I highlighted in the report. We are currently billing sewer service, which is over $3.6 million billing. You can see that, as in the real estate, our liens that we had to file were higher this year as they were in the prior year. Not quite sure what's going on there yet. And then this is our second year of the new ordinance that does not allow commuter permit holders to renew their permits until if they have any delinquent taxes or parking tickets. So for us, we started at $14,600 worth of outstanding taxes, and as of today, that number has been brought down to under $1,800 and only 5 permit holders. So it's very effective.
That's great.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have any other questions.
I just had one question. I think the result is great on the parking thing. Under the sewer thing, I'm just looking at the data, and you said that we have 7,091 parcels of Darien and 5,369 are connected to the sewers.
Correct.
That
Or
means-
they receive a billing, so they could have wells. So they may not be connected to this, I'm sorry.
They could have a septic tank?
I'm sorry, say that again?
If they're connected to the sewer system,
Yes.
that means they don't have a septic tank, septic field, correct?
They shouldn't.
Right. So that means that if I'm looking at this, 1,722 parcels, or 24% of those in Darien, are not on the sewer system. That's about right?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to,
Yeah.
it's sort of a measure. I hadn't really appreciated how many parcels are actually on the sewer system.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just looking back to Darren's report, his report says we have 5,215 sewer customers.
He said how much?
5,215 sewer customers.
So we're off by like 150 accounts?
So we might just check those. Maybe just want to
Yeah,
get
and I'm
together
not
check
sure, there are different accounts that get added, so I'm not sure at what point you're taking your figures from and what point I'm taking my figures from.
We used Computel, our software service company, to generate our bills, and that's where our numbers came from, the most recent report.
Right, and I get a file from them, and that's what I base my billing on. So we'll have to sit down and figure out what the difference is.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you. Yep. Anything else for Kathy? Thank you very much. Okay. Town clerk.
I have nothing further to add. I learned that back in 2001. That was my very first report. That was what I was told to say.
Oh, no kidding. Wow. Well,
And I really
2001.
don't have anything to add for that quarter. We're on a new quarter now, and very busy with our new quarter.
Donna, it's certainly nothing we can do. It's just unfortunate that we have some districts that don't have enough candidates for the RTM, yet we have one district that.
They're going to sort of even out. We had a little bit of a dilemma this year because of the number of vacancies that are predictable because their terms are up in November, but we have 3 people who will move up to another position, and they are presently on the RTM, but their terms are not up until November. So I can't count them as vacancies because they haven't given me a resignation, which is appropriate until November. Or they can give it to me now if they wish, because there are no more RTM meetings until after the election. So That kind of skews it, but we did have really an all-time high this year of 9 petitioning candidates for the RTM, and I have 2 write-ins already. But with John's gift, I'm going to have to do some balancing.
Anything else for Donna? No, well, I'd like for us to give you a warm round of applause for 15 years. Thank you, Donna. Town Treasurer, Joan.
Good morning.
Morning.
I just have about 3 small things to add. First of all, because of the timing difference when this report goes in and when I get numbers, the 2-month numbers are now for the general fund are $173,852.35. And the total town funds are $196,536.02. A couple more things to just add. When I was doing my League of Women Voters statement, one thing came up, and I don't think we've ever emphasized it. When we do our bank deposits, they're 100% collateralized. So as we go into tougher economic times, these are collateralized, that's banking law. They're also partially insured. When we go into a fund, there's nothing but the assets. So I did want to make that distinction. It is in my response in the League of Women Voters. Secondly, I've been asked for rates, actually the last thing, to compare what we get. Our portfolio now is between 1 and 2.65%. We obviously, when the rebonding comes, we're going to take the lower number to rebond, to use. To give you some idea of where things are, and this is as of this morning, 3-month treasuries are at 1.63. Stiff is at 1.95. I want to highlight our most recent transaction, which was in the report, but the details were not because they weren't all sorted out. We did a $10 million new facility with Webster. They have offered us, we converted our investment to a now account. We are guaranteed 2% for the next 2 years. And we get earnings credit, which can be used to pay, since Jen's service, Kathy's service, and mine will be bundled, that the earnings credit that I earn will be used to pay for some of their expenses. I'm very pleased with that. So this 2%, I'm proud to say, is above what Stiff would pay. And it's collateralized and partially insured. So any questions?
No, that was great information, Joan.
Okay.
Anything else for Joan?
Anything?
Great.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, Jim Cameron, you have to put your other hat on now and come report to us for TV 79.
The voice from the control room.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm running the meeting and appearing as well too. I think the report speaks for itself. The third quarter is usually pretty quiet for us, given the summertime period. So we used that time to finish the construction of the fiber optic cable for room 119, which means that we can now do live meetings out of 119. And PNC meets there, Pear Tree Beach meets there, Board of Finance occasionally meets there. So we have that capability now, and that's quite exciting. The viewership statistics that I include show viewership definitely picked up first week in September when people got back and they wanted to get kind of plugged into what's going on in town. And we've had a couple of meetings that have had over 1,000 views. Happy to answer any questions.
First, please extend our well wishes to Dave Beaver.
I just got an email from him. He successfully went through surgery last week, so
Good.
he is still in rehab, but we're doing the best we can without him. We've had some equipment problems, but Mike Wheeler, who's the chairman of the TV 79 Advisory Board, is jumping in, and we're doing everything we can to keep everything running.
Thank you. Questions for Jim?
No, I just have a statement. I can't thank you enough because 24/7. If anyone has a question about any meeting, it's accessible. And I mean, I've utilized a lot more. You guys get these meetings up in lightning speed. It's unbelievable that.
Working very hard to do that. Like last night's RTM meeting is now on Vimeo. So if anybody wants to see that, it's going to be there. This meeting will be on Vimeo by this afternoon. I think it's important to turn those things around as fast as possible. And then the rotation starts on Friday, and if people really want to tune in. I'm still getting the impression, and I don't have any statistics to prove this, but I get the impression that most of our viewership is now on Vimeo. People are going to the on-demand, searchable capability. We still have to have programming on the cable channel itself, Channel 79, because we get grants from the Area 9 Cable Council, on which Dave Deaver and I still serve. But that's why I try to turn them around as fast as I can.
Yeah, the public definitely has accessibility, and if anyone doesn't think that they do, they should tune into it. It's
right.
Incredible.
And I've also taken the liberty, as I've received some emails, I'm on the RTM, as I've received some emails from people who are concerned about particular issues in town, I have added their emails to our program guide distribution list and invited them to, many of them were not on the list, I invited them to tune in and look at the meetings that they have been expressing concerns about.
That's great. Thank you for doing that.
You're very welcome.
Anything else for Jim?
In 119, with the work you've done, will you be adding microphones, or, because I watched the last Park and Rec meeting, and people who spoke at the podium were very easy to hear.
Yeah.
But the board members who were not at the podium, I actually had the volume up to like 80, 90 in order to be able to hear them.
I am sympathetic to that problem. We still only have ceiling mics in there. We might try to revisit that, but I've been working with the staff, the videographers, the camera operators, to get them to be more sensitive to turning up the volume and not just relying on the volume in their headphones, but watching the meters and making sure that people can hear them. So I apologize for that.
Thank you.
Okay, back to the controls.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, last but certainly not least, Youth Commission. Alicia, good morning.
See if we can get done before he gets back.
He's moving pretty fast.
I know. I have two additional comments. One is in response to Ally and the question, I believe it was from you, Susan. Ally and I work very closely together, or maybe it was you, Pam, with regards to families that she services for the Back to School program and whatnot. She and I meet annually to review scholarship applications for the summer camp program. And then in December, the Youth Commission coordinates the holiday gift drive that takes place at the movie theater. So, you know, as the youth director and as the human services director, we work very closely in making certain that at least the clients that we serve in that capacity are not overlooked. And then to your comment, Jamie, about the EEE threat and directing families to have family discussions.
Yep.
After Dr. Adley released his statement to the school-age population, we had received a few inquiries from parents of the 7th grade TOPS members as to whether or not we were going to adjust our event on Friday evening. It was the Tokening Fair night. It was from 6 to 8. After a little bit of discussion with the town administrator, we determined that we were going to move forward as scheduled, and we sent out an e-blast and included the health director's press release and reminded parents that it was an opt-in program and that it was really up to parents to make the decision about how they were permitting their children to engage in outdoor activities. So I appreciate that we kind of were on the same trajectory. Our numbers, I don't think, were impacted. We had 225 kids, and in addition to the typical smells that one can expect at a 7th grade event, there was plenty of citronella in the air, and it was a tremendously successful event. So I don't think that we were negatively impacted by EEE that night.
That's great. Thank you, and I appreciate that unplanned consistency of messaging.
Good. Any questions?
No, I just wanted to sort of offer a compliment. I'm a new middle school parent, and we signed up for TOPS, and our 6th grader absolutely loved the first event.
Good.
So thank you.
Good. Hope that we see him or her
Or
on
the next
November
one.
4th at Sky Zone, 6th and 7th grade, 6 to 8. There's no school on Tuesday.
I thank you for saying that, because I did not have that on my radar.
You know what? It's amazing how much we get it out there, and I think we're so overwhelmed with the information that we tend to look for only what we think applies to us. But we'll hammer you. You'll have no choice but to know about it, and then you'll have a choice to whether or not she'll attend.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, one last thing. So this is also the last quarterly department heads meeting for 3 of our Board of Selectmen members, Susan, Pam, and Mark. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that with all of you and give them the opportunity if they wanted to make any comments at this morning's meeting.
I'll make a comment. So I want to just thank all of you. Over the 6 years, I think one of the things that stands out, especially this morning, is there's so much collaboration between all of the departments. I'm sure a lot has to do with Kate and with Jamie, but it truly has been a pleasure listening to all of you guys for 6 years. And the collaboration between the town and then, as I mentioned this morning, with the schools now starting to have more collaboration, it will just become such a more productive, healthy environment. So thank you all for your hard work and dedication and for answering all the questions and providing us all this information over the years.
Thanks.
And for me, it's only been 2 years, but I like the wealth of knowledge that each of you share with us and has shared with me. I feel so much more informed and confident about how this town is run, and I'm so optimistic about what the future looks like for this community and for my children, and it's really reassuring, and I feel like I can talk with confidence to my peers and my colleagues locally about how well Darien is doing and will continue to because of all of you. So thank you for that reassurance. And I would say also, coming from the minority party as a Democrat, I don't feel that in any of the reports. I don't feel that across this board. I think municipal politics is really void of party affiliation, and I wasn't sure I was expecting that going in, but it is such a pleasure and it has been such a treat to sit and work with everybody that I've worked with. So thank you.
Thank you. I actually have very little to add. I totally support the comments by both of my peers, and I have to say it's been a pleasure to work in this job for the last 4 years.
Great, thank you. And we will look forward to welcoming Sarah Newman and David Martin. I don't know if Sarah's here, but David is here today in the back of the room, so we'll welcome him at our next quarterly department heads meeting. And with that, oh, and Krista's back there. She will be our new Board of Selectmen member for the Republican Party, and we will look forward to continuing the tradition that Pam mentioned, that we work as a very nonpartisan board for the benefit of our town residents in collaboration with all of you. So with that, thank you very much and have a great day. Everybody got this? This is for our special meeting.